Hello, and thank you for watching another live. We are 3 days, 3 days away from book launch, which is incredibly exciting. And uh, yeah, it's kind of hard to. We're so close to being kind of done with this process. It's super exciting. So. Um, if this is your first time watching one of the lives, I've been going live essentially every day for the last almost a week now, leading up to Thursday's book launch. That's when the book comes out. It's called Deep Self Magic, a step by step roadmap to spiritual authenticity. And it launches in ebook form on Thursday, probably a little bit delayed on the paperback just because of the way things are in the world and supply and delays and shipping and all of that stuff. Um, but the ebook for sure on Thursday, and there's going to be a virtual launch event that evening. The invite is online, and you can get details at deepselfmagic.com. Um, there is also going to be, I talked a little on my previous lives about how there's going to be some giveaways, 14 days of giveaways, as the uh, after the starting on Thursday, once we've got the launch sort of underway, and also Thursday is the 1 year anniversary of the Waxing Soul podcast, so there's going to be a sort of a special episode of that on Thursday. And I'm going to relaunch. I sort of soft launched a Patreon earlier this year. Kind of didn't do a whole lot with it. It was sort of a good idea that never really took off. But I'm working out some sort of deeper ideas. And with this book being kind of a step by step guide, kind of a process, it lends itself. I mean, eventually it's going to be a workbook and other things. So, that's going to basically be what my Patreon turns into. So, as a patron, um, having sort of monthly sets of what would eventually be exercises and discussions and stuff, prompts and things that would go into the workbook, and special access to. I think there's going to be another tier that I've been wanting to do. I think is the coolest idea ever, but it has to do with the production of the and design of what will be the Oracle deck that comes out of this book, and sort of an opportunity to get a special version as a patron. Built a few cards at a time as we sort of, being able to vote on designs and which cards belong in and which cards don't. And so there's some super, super cool stuff coming on the Patreon. That said, I want to kind of, what I wanted to do today on the live is talk a little bit. I've kind of told the story about where a lot of the ideas come from for the book, my experiences that led to me wanting to write it, why I chose to write on this particular topic of spiritual authenticity and shadow work and all of this stuff. But I wanted to kind of, I think one of the most important aspects of how this book came to be just boils down to the writing of the book itself. And I think I mentioned in some previous lives that this is something that's previous live streams, not previous lives, not past lives. That this book sort of fought me. This was a something that was in the process, at least as an idea and sort of rudimentary rough drafts and that sort of thing for quite a long time. I mean, years. And I think I finished. I think I started kind of writing what would become this book maybe in 2014 or 2015. Um, and it started out as, I sort of realized as I was working on this much larger research project and digging into anthropology and human history and the history of spirituality and where it comes from, and as I was writing the first chapter and realized that could sort of spawn a book of its own. My honestly my initial instinct was to write like a since I grew up in an evangelical uh, household, um, writing a devotional book, like a pagan devotional. And I started in on that, and the more I did it, the more it just didn't feel like that was quite what was called for. And It felt sort of awkward. I was sort of pushing myself to kind of cram ideas in there and make it fit that format. And then it sort of became this other, this guide, as I realized what I talked about, I think, yesterday, about kind of stepping away from my spirituality on accident and realizing that that was a really good exercise in figuring out what was important to me and what I did need and how to find that in my spiritual practice. Um, it sort of came together in my head as an idea, but I still, like, literally, if you've ever written, and this is for all the writers out there, like, it's sometimes, no matter how clear we are on a on an idea, it doesn't want to come together the way we think that it wants to come. It should come together, and that's the story of this. I've started and stopped the rough draft of this probably 5 times, and I've taken it up as my NaNoWriMo project, and it's been, I've tried and tried at it. And this year I kind of, numerologically, this was a year for me that I knew was going to be one of sort of progress, and I felt kind of called to finish this out. This is what I felt compelled to do, with that energy. So I found Carnelian Moon Publishing. I hired them. I started working with Judith, and I'd set a deadline, and the manuscript was supposed to be done in mid-August. And it just wasn't. And when I sat down to, I felt like I had the bulk of the material, and I would sit down and I would put it in order in the chapters, and I feel like this is probably the flow, and I'd get in there to try to start filling in the spaces and beef it up and start elaborating on the ideas and really fleshing out my notes. And every time I did, I was like, no, this isn't right. Like, this isn't coming together right. I feel like I'm not saying what I need to say. I feel like I'm not saying it well. I feel like it's not necessarily the right way to say it. Did somebody else say it before? And there were a couple of really milestone things in there that, if you're a writer, or even if you're not, I've never been much of one for keeping a journal consistently. It's not something that I'm good at doing. But the act of writing, even if it's not in journal form, is really, and this book is really all about shadow work in the first parts. And we all know that journaling is, really valuable for shadow work, but I think all writing is, because what this book turned into is, for me, kind of going through the process of stuff that I was writing about in the book and trying to make it, I had to kind of dig up some of my own inauthenticities and my own shadow self and deal with some of the stuff that was making me emotionally want to write it in a certain way so that it would be correct, or would appeal to people, or should I include this part, or should I say this, and how should I say this part. And finally it kind of occurred to me that, like, if I was going to be authentic, and I needed to be in this book, I mean, that was the whole point, and that the only really authentic way to do it was for me to tell my own stories. So this, I coach. I'm a business coach as part of what I do for my real job, for a living. That's what I do. And there's a lot that I have learned from that. And one of the things is that, you're going to connect with an audience more if you speak to your own experience and speak to speak directly to the audience that you identify with and connect with. And I realized that for this book, what I really needed to do, and what I was being called to kind of do and compelled to do, was to share my own stories, because it didn't matter who people who've gone through this or this other thing, or come out of this path into this one, I should write so that and I was like, I just have to tell my own story so that the people who are on a similar trajectory or have gone through similar things, or at least people reading through the book, can go, oh, that is something relatable. This is something that illustrates it in a way that I also have lived through a similar thing. And some of the stories that I tell in the book are funny. Some of them are just weird asides or whatever, but they're a window, not just, it's not supposed to be a window necessarily into my life, but in a way that that resonates with common experiences, and comes from not, I didn't want to write this book as something preachy, right? Like, I didn't want to sit here and go, this is how you do things, this is how you be authentic, follow these rules. It was, this is how I've learned what this means. Like, these are the things that showed me when I was being authentic and wasn't, and made these concepts make sense to me so that they can make sense to other people. Because it's really all about connection and storytelling, which is, sort of the timeless, one of the, I think, in my own opinion, the oldest part of spirituality is storytelling, and telling our own stories, and telling the stories that tie us together. So, how much of your spiritual activity do you shape around connecting with people? I think, either in all the ways, in doing things with people, in connecting on a experiential level, in understanding other people, in letting other people understand you, all of that stuff. How much of that is your spirituality? Because as I talk about in the book, like, that's really the core of spirituality. It's spirit, it's exchange, it's energy exchange. And sometimes we learn the most about ourselves when we connect with other people, and when we actually embody who we are authentically around other people who are also embodying their authenticity. That's when we learn the most about who we are. And it's a process we never reach the end of. It never ends. Authenticity isn't something that you achieve once and just sit there forever. So, you don't wait until you feel like you've perfected yourself spiritually, and before you follow your inspiration. Following your inspiration is not an end goal. It's part of the process. And writing this book has been part of that process for me, and a huge part of my spiritual development. And so that's why one of the reasons that I am super excited to have it done, and to be bringing it out, and to actually, to see it actually fall together, was a moment not just of achievement, but of, this is me processing my own stuff. So hopefully it's as impactful for everybody as it was for me to write it. So Deep Self Magic, a step-by-step roadmap to spiritual authenticity, launches on Thursday. The link, I haven't put it there yet, but if you go to deepselfmagic.com, in a matter of moments, I will have put it on the page. Carnelian Moon just posted it. So the link to that event, so you can RSVP on Facebook. There's also a link to the Google event that I have created, so you can put that on your Google Calendar. However you want to do it. I would love to have lots and lots of people there watching my launch party. It's going to be a really good time, and talking a lot about what's in the book, and I'll do a reading or two, and it's going to be very informative, very cool. 2 weeks of giveaways after that. All sorts of fun stuff coming up. So thank you very, very much for joining and watching. See the rest of the live streams. I've been posting them to my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Bridget Owens Magic. It's the page for my this book and the podcast and all of the stuff. And also on my Instagram, which is instagram.com/ it's at Bridget Owens Magic on Instagram, and also on my YouTube, which is linked directly on deepselfmagic.com. So thank you again for watching. I will be back live tomorrow, I believe, on my Instagram is the plan, and lots more stuff, cool stuff to unveil this week. Don't hesitate to go to deepselfmagic.com, sign up for the update list so you get emails and stuff with all the cool links in it, and be registered for that for the giveaways. So have a great night. See you tomorrow.